our first step in learning how to use Fusion 360. Today we're going to teach you how to make a dice, and it'll be the first step in several things that we teach you to get towards our final project. Okay, so this is an example of what we're going to make. When you first open Fusion 360, it will give you a blank page like what you see here. So just a quick tutorial on what we've got to do. First thing you have to do when you're designing anything in Fusion 360 is to draw a sketch. To do that, I click on the sketch button, which is right here, and I have the option to pick from 3 different planes. And you'll notice as I move my cursor that it shows you kind of an illustration of which plane that we're in. Remember, this is a 3D virtual environment, so it's kind of like Minecraft, where you can float around in any direction you want. But since we're drawing a sketch, it needs to be on a flat surface, not a 3D environment. So that's why it's asking for a plane. So I'm going to start with this plane right here, which is my XY plane, and you'll notice up here that the tools change. I'm going to start by drawing a rectangle. I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to make mine 2.5, and I push the tab button on my keyboard so that it moves, it highlights the green 2.5 right here, so 2.5, and I push enter. Okay, I'm going to undo that for just a minute, and I'm going to show you a couple things that sometimes happen. Sometimes I have students click on this rectangle button, and they come out here and then they just click, and the rectangle is made, but it's not the right size. So if you do that, you don't have to delete it and start over. What you can do is hit this little sketch dimension tool, and then I'll select the line that I want to change. When I select it, it turns into the dimension itself, but before I can change the numbers, I have to pin it down by clicking again. So I click there, and now I can change it to 2.5, and it's now constrained to that amount. Okay, same thing again on the bottom one. I would click here. You notice that one was too small. So I've got to click to, I selected the line, I'm going to click again to pin it down, and then after I've done those 2 things, I can start changing the dimension, and I can type 2.5 again. Okay, once you've created a perfect square that's exactly the right size, then you can finish the sketch. Now I'm going to pause for just one moment. If you haven't done so already, the units by default on your Fusion 360 will be in millimeters. So if you click this little white arrow that's next to document settings, click right here, and then you'll see that I've got a units, and then this little thing pops up when my cursor gets close. Click on that and make sure that it's on inches, and then before you click OK, you'll want to make sure that this box is checked to set it as the default, and that way it'll always open up a new drawing in inches and you don't have to do it each time. Okay, so make sure you've done that. Otherwise your box right now would be drawn 2.5 millimeters and it's very small. Okay, the next step after we've drawn our perfect square is to extrude it and turn it into a 3D object. To do that, we click on this extrude button and we type in the dimension that we want it to be, 2.5, which is a perfect cube because our square was 2.5 by 2.5. Now we want to come up exactly 2.5, and we say OK. So it kind of gives you a preview first, and if you like what you're seeing, then you click the OK button. Okay, so now that we have our perfect cube, it's now time to draw our holes on the sides of the dice. Now you're going to repeat this process 6 times because there's 6 different sides of the dice. Okay, so first thing we have to do is tell it that we want to sketch, and we're going to pick one of the surfaces of the dice. Remember, we're not selecting these yellow ones. We're selecting the surface of the dice itself. You'll notice that it kind of turns gray depending on where my cursor is, which side I'm going to draw on. So if I wanted to draw on this top, I would click on that and it automatically turns it. and we'll make this side the one side of the dice. So to do that, I'm going to draw a circle, and I'm going to pick the center of the object. Okay, you'll notice here that I've got that little dashed green line coming over from the center there, but how do I know where it is left and right? We called this polar tracking before. If you come up here and get that little triangle, and then you start coming down, see how the green lines start showing up, and then when I get to here, it will, the other green line will show up. Now I'm going to pick a dimension that I want to be consistent with. I'm going to pick 0.5 so that all my circles are the same. So I need to maybe either write that down or just simply remember it for all the future circles that I'm going to build. Okay, once I've drawn my circle, I'm going to finish that sketch, and I now do another extrusion. When I click on the extrusion, if I hold my mouse still, a little description pops up next to my arrow of what it needs you to do next. And it says right there, select sketch profiles or planar faces to extrude. So in other words, what it's saying is what do you want to cut? And I want to cut this circle, not the square. You'll notice that I could select the circle or the square. I want to cut just the circle, so I'll select that. Okay, and then I can push the arrow down, and I'm going to remember that number right there too. It's snapped right to 0.1. You could choose a different number, but again, just like the 5-inch diameter, on this one we need to remember what that number is if we want it to look the same all the way around the cube. And once I like what I'm seeing, red means that it's cutting. Once I like what I'm seeing, I'm going to say OK. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that process again and again. If you guys want to look up how the dice are supposed to be, I think there is some rules that show that the 2 should be straight across from the 1 or something. I actually don't know it for sure, so I'm going to do that. By the way, how I orbited that is I click this orbit tool, and then I click my mouse, and just kind of I click and hold my left button and start moving my mouse. And if I click once, it'll center to that point. So I could center over here, but if I click right there, it'll center to right there. And then I've got to push the escape button on my keyboard to stop revolving, or orbiting, I mean to say. Okay, escape. So now I'm back to a normal arrow on my cursor. Okay, so I'm going to create a sketch, and it's on this surface right here. And so for this one, I'm going to draw 2 circles. You can see your grid, so if you want to use your grid, you can see there's kind of heavier lines and then lighter lines. I'm going to go by these heavier lines. I'm going to come over 1, 2, okay, and then I'm going to come down 1, 2, which is right. That one's harder to see for me, my eyes. Yeah, that's it right there. Okay, and remember my size was 0.5. Enter. Now I'm going to draw another circle. It's going to be 2 big squares up and 2 over right there. And again, it's 0.5. Enter. Okay, and so now I'm done drawing on the 2 side. I'm going to say I'm finished with that sketch, and I'm going to do a new extrusion. Took just a minute for it to get there. Hit the extrusion, and I'm going to select my circle and this circle, or I'm going to do them both at the same time. And then this little arrow, I can push and move it around, and remember my number was 0.1. So if I want them to be consistent, I'm going to do it. I can just type in there too. I don't have to push and pull with the arrow. I can manually type -0.1, and it would get me to the same spot. But once I like what I see, I say OK, and it is now extruded that side of the dice. So if I grab this and flip it around, you can see there's the 1 and there's the 2. You're going to repeat that process 4 more times for a 3, a 4, a 5, and a 6. Okay? Now, I'm not going to go ahead and do that for this video. If you need to rewind it and see how to do that step, I've already done it twice, and you'll repeat it. But I am going to point something out down here at the bottom. This right here is creating a timeline of what I've done. So if I kind of drag this back to, you'll notice that the sketch is still there, but it's not displaying it on the screen. So I can go forward and back in time to show each step that I made. If you remember, I started by drawing a square, we extruded it into a sketch. Then I created a new sketch, which was the number 1, and then I extruded it. And then I drew the 2 circles, the 2 side, and then I extruded it. Okay, and so now I would do that 4 more times. So that kind of just shows you the order that I'm doing things. If I ever mess up or maybe accidentally make some extra ones, if I right click on here, I can either delete it and start over, or I can edit it. So let's say I were to edit this feature, you can see that I can now go change the depth. Maybe I accidentally went in too deep and I need to bring it back to -0.1. And then I can edit it without having to delete it and start over. And then when I'm done, I just click OK, just as I did before. Maybe you made your circles the wrong size. I can right click and edit the sketch, and I can tell it that this was supposed to be a 0.6 circle. And by doing that, when I say finish the sketch, it will update both the extrude and that sketch. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's a good way of going back and fixing mistakes if you made them. But other than that, your assignment is to draw a dice with 6 sides and submit an image of it. When you're done, you'll take a picture of it and submit it on Canvas as for the dice assignment. Okay, good luck.